Meta AI is the personal AI to help you with whatever you need. Plus, it meets you where you are. Not only is Meta AI now an app, but it's also on the apps you already know and love: Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, and Messenger. Plus the Ray-Ban Meta glasses. It's easy to access wherever you are. So whether you're talking or texting, Meta AI is convenient to use throughout your day. Experience our newest AI that's tailored to you by downloading the Meta AI app. Try the Meta AI app today on the Apple App Store and Google Play.
Today's episode is brought to you by SalesCred Pro, the strategic resource for B2B sales that fortifies your credibility and accelerates the trust building needed for building successful business relationships. Get your free 7-day trial now at salescred.com/pro. Welcome to the Manage Smarter podcast with hosts C. Lee Smith and Audrey Strong. We're glad you're here for discussions on new ways to manage smarter, hire, develop, and retain talent, improve results, and propel team performance to new heights. This is the Manage Smarter podcast.
Lee, what do 55 plus employees and just out of school Gen Z employees have in common? It's not a trick question.
It's not. Okay,
No.
well, thankfully. It's like they sometimes have difficulty being taken seriously, I would be my guess, because the older employees or whatever, particularly when you're dealing with technology and you're dealing with, new ways of doing things and new ideas from the younger set, something like that, sometimes, are discounted because of their age and not given credit for their experience. And likewise, the younger set can be discounted then by older management and everything like that because, they're new to the job. It's like, what do you know? You have no experience. So that would be my guess, is that their age plays a factor in how they're being perceived.
That's absolutely correct. You're a dinosaur and you don't know anything. Like both ends of the spectrum. That's the topic today. Welcome to Manage Smarter, everyone. I'm Audrey Strong, Senior Vice President of Communications here at Sales Fuel.
And I'm C. Lee Smith. I'm the CEO and founder of Sales Fuel. And Audrey, this is a topic that I think appeals to, if you're a manager and you're dealing with young employees, that's a factor. Also, if, you're of management age or whatever, and you've got a child, for example, that's trying to get their first job in the real world, they'll encounter this kind of stuff. And of course, naturally, if you are a younger manager, and you've elevated yourself to a management position, far earlier than a lot of people, and you're now having to manage people, that are much older than you, this is the show for you.
All of it. So our guest today, Stephanie Brown, she talked about how getting fired is a blessing in disguise in episode 247. Now she's back to talk about ageism in the young generations. And she's the founder of the Creative Career Lab. And she spent the last 15 years working in marketing and creative and tech industries, including 13 years in senior roles at both Nike and Apple. And in 2019, left to launch the Creative Career Level Up. It's a flagship coaching and training program designed to help those in marketing, creative, and tech industries level up their careers. And she's got a lot, follow her and link to her on LinkedIn. She's got a lot of blog posts on this very topic. Stephanie, thank you for coming back to the show. This is a great topic. I'm thrilled you're here.
Thank you guys for having me. I'm humbled to be asked to come back. So that's awesome. Thank you.
So I guess what Lee said in the terms of the relevancy to so many different managers in so many different situations and parents and even 20-somethings listening to this, is this really a real thing? I mean, you're seeing this and hearing about this, correct? And you have clients that need help with it, young clients.
Yeah, I definitely see this. I think ageism, and I love that you made the comparison to older generations because there's definitely ageism at the other end as well. I think ageism is something we probably don't talk about a lot. I think it's something that is there. It definitely is unconscious sometimes. It can definitely be an unconscious bias that people have. And I think it's something that people don't acknowledge enough, but you definitely see a lot of it. And I think in workplaces, there can sometimes be little comments about someone's age, about their lack of experience. And I don't think we acknowledge enough what people bring outside of putting a number on how old they are and what they're bringing to a role. So yeah, it's definitely something that I'm seeing, and it's definitely something that clients of mine have felt. And I don't think it's new. I think it's been going on for longer than we probably think.
Mm-hmm. I remember when my first real world job, I fought that issue all the time, and I tried to grow a mustache so it would look older or whatever. It was a very disappointing effort. It didn't work.
It's interesting though, because that is, I think, how people feel sometimes. I definitely people try to hide these things. I had an agency that I worked with back in my Nike days, and the founder, who is a very close friend of mine now, she lied about her age to me because she started her agency when she was 23, and by the time I met her, she was 26. But she was working with some really big global clients, one of which is a very old established bank in the UK. And she was working with Nike as well. And to be honest, Nike hires very young, and there's not a lot of ageism at Nike if I'm remembering correctly. So we didn't mind that she was young. We thought that was great. A lot of the Nike consumer is young, so we loved that we had an agency founder who was actually very young at the time. But for the other clients that she had, the more established bank where she was working with much older clients, she didn't feel comfortable explaining to them that, hey, actually, I started this agency when I was 23. I'm now only 26. So she told me she was 29, and I became very close friends with her. And then she told me she was actually 3 years younger, which I had found hilarious at the time. But, it's a real example. This was, 15 years ago. This is a real example of how, she's a very talented woman. She started this agency at a very young age. It's incredibly successful, but she felt like she couldn't be honest about her age because she would be judged by particularly this other brand that she was working with, because it was just a very old school established banking brand in the UK.
One of your blog posts that stuck out to me, and there were several with some ideas and solutions. We're going to get to that in a bit, but was entitled, "No one cares about your education." So what did you mean by that? And if you don't have, you're supposed to de-emphasize your education and emphasize your work experience, even if it's at Burger King. Like, what are you saying?
Yeah, it's not about de-emphasizing your education. Look, if you have an university education, it's fantastic. You've paid good money for it. You should definitely let people know that you have it. I think where younger people sometimes go wrong, and I did this myself. This is not a new thing. You go to university, you're told that having a university education is kind of the key to opening all these opportunities, and it's what matters the most. And when you're in that university system, you really believe that it gets emphasized to you, and it should, because you're spending a lot of money to get this university education. When you come out, and I see this a lot with new grads when they're writing their resumes, because it's the most significant thing you've recently done, you feel like it's going to be the most significant thing that will get you hired. And actually, in some professions, for sure, if you went to a certain university, there are definitely professions where they will hire you off the back of going to a certain university. That's definitely a thing. But the majority of university graduates are not going to be hired off the back of the university they went to, or the results that they got at that university. They will be more hired off their work experience, or if anything, their soft skills, their initiative, all the things that they can show in terms of their personality, what they bring to the table. The problem is that I've seen people, and they've said this to me, they've said, I went to this university, I got these grades, how am I not getting a job? And they sort of expect that because of that they should automatically be able to get a job. And that's something that's reinforced to us. And as I said, it was even reinforced to me 20 years ago when I came out of university and struggled to get a job. And I kept thinking, I got really good grades at uni. Why is no one hiring me? And then I realized that they don't really care about the grades I got at university, that they're looking at other things. And when you don't have those other things, if you haven't got work experience yet, it's really hard to show what those other things are. So you do fall back on your university. But it's just around that mindset of, but I went to this uni and I got these grades. Why are people not falling all over themselves to hire me? Because I was told that if I spent all this money and I went to this university, which is a really recognized university, I thought that people would be clamoring to hire me. Why are they not? And that's a real thing that a lot of my younger clients struggle with. They can't understand why, having been told, this is a really prestigious university, why am I not getting picked up straight away?
So I always tell the younger folks that I work with and that I consult with, and I do a lot of work with college age kids and also younger than that, is that your university graduation, your degree basically is just a ticket to compete, right? That gets you in the door. If you don't have it, you'll get eliminated. But you need that just to compete, because everyone else you're competing with for that job has that college education as well. So what you really want to focus on is on, particularly on your LinkedIn profile, is that you don't necessarily want to say, I went to this college, I'm a major in this or whatever, but what did you do there? It's like, okay, I did a class project where we did blah, 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 blah. Or while I was there, I freelanced and did this, and how you actually applied, what you were learning there and some of the things that you did, not only the things you did in class, but the things you did outside of class. And that really resonates more rather than saying that you had a high GPA and you graduate cum laude and all that, because it never really did anything for me. And quite frankly, I have a niece that just graduated. I have a son that graduated a couple years ago, whatever, same deal. I mean, it's like they preached all that, they drank the Kool-Aid, and they got into the real world, and it was a bit of a shock.
Yeah, that's a perfect example. It gets you a ticket to play the game, and it is a shock, and it was a shock for myself as well. So this isn't me throwing shade at younger generations that are sold this, because I was sold the same thing, and
Same.
Me too.
it is a big shock when you come out and you're like, but people told me if I got into this university and if I got these marks, then that was the key to career success. And actually, you can be an average student and go to a university that people haven't necessarily heard of. But if you show initiative, if you're in there hustling to get the job, if you're making connections with people, if you're networking with lots of people, if you're showing that you're really hungry for the opportunity, I know from being in businesses myself that those people will get hired all day long before people who have a great university but aren't showing that drive and hustle.
What are some of the other soft skills that parents should be drilling their kids on, or if I'm a young person that I'm not aware of, or I bought in and drank the Kool-Aid and I'm ticking off, just like ticking off where I went and what my grades were. But I mean, like you said, network, what do I need to do soft skill wise to get the interview so that I can also drill on my interviewing? I know one of the soft skills my parents taught me was more personalized touch points with the decision maker. So sending a old fashioned snail mail thank you card to somebody is so antiquated and weird now that you actually stick out in a nice way. What else?
Yeah, I actually agree with that. I think snail mail, let's call it that, is making you come back. Someone said to me the other day, "But how do I get my resume into the hands of a hiring manager if I don't know how to get hold of them?" And I was like, "Well, if you know what their name is, you've looked them up on LinkedIn, you found their name, look up where the company headquarters is, send them your resume in the post." No one else will be doing that. That is a guaranteed way that it lands on their desk and they open it and they read it. Or you could go down, one of my clients went down to the offices of the company and actually gave her resume to the hiring manager. She actually asked to speak to them and they came out and she said, "Look, I know that there is thousands of applications for this role." It was a junior level role. She said, "I know there's thousands of applications for this role. I'm not trying to be weird and stalk you or anything, but I just wanted to come down and show you that I'm really keen on this role, to give you my resume. Thank you. Enjoy your day. I'm going to leave now, but I just wanted to give it to you." And she was really impressed. The woman she gave it to, she was like, "Hey, good on you for having the initiative to come down here." She said they both laughed and said, "Yeah, it is a bit weird in many ways, like, tongue in cheek weird. It wasn't. Well, she wasn't stalking her, but you know what I mean? It's that initiative that she had. She went down there. She lives in London. She can go down to the offices. There's no one stopping her from doing that. And the woman was impressed, So think outside the box. Don't get so caught up on, here's LinkedIn, that's all I can use, or here's Indeed, or whatever the online websites are, because there are other ways. If you free your mind from thinking job hunting is just applying online, if you free your mind from that, all of a sudden you start to think of other things like, hey, could I send them something in the post? Could I go down and hand it to them in person? You start to think of those other things. And those other things are what show the soft skills. That shows the initiative, that shows the drive, that shows the hunger. And one movement, by going down there and handing her the resume, it said so many other things about her. If you were to hire me, this is the kind of person I am. And those are the soft skills you want to be showing.
Funny, you just reminded me of something that I did. And I took my resume. I went to a shop then that blew it up on the same printer that architects use for blueprints and stuff like that. Super huge. Rolled it up, put it into a tube, sent it off to the guy. with a note that said, "Expect big things from C. Lee Smith." So he opened
No,
it up.
that's so awesome.
It's a mammoth-sized resume or whatever. So I did get an offer. So it did work.
Yeah,
It's
that's
like
awesome.
Bud Fox calling Gordon Gecko every day for a year in Wall
Yeah.
Street.
You
Yeah,
got to be different, right? It's like
Yeah.
just that's success in business in a nutshell. You got to be different. If you're the same and you're doing what everybody else does, and you're hanging on your hat on the stuff that everybody else is hanging their hat on, and everything like that, that's not going to get you where you want to be. You got to be different. You got to stand out somehow. And do something a little bit novel that and that means, as you say, thinking outside the box, but actually just applying your creativity and imagination. If you're not prone to creativity and imagination, if that's not your brain wiring or whatever, find somebody then who really excels at that or whatever, and tap into their brain power, because that's what it's going to take, especially on that first job, I think.
Yeah, you make a really great comparison there to business. The comparison being that, if you are in business, there are a whole lot of other skills that you probably haven't thought about yet as a young person because you haven't been working yet. But what I would say is get in the mindset of an entrepreneur. If getting this job was your business, if you were launching yourself as a business and you're a startup and you're hustling to get sales, you're hustling to get clients, what would you be doing? How would you be thinking about this? Because I feel like the online application process where you just put an application in and you hope someone sees it. I feel like that's a very employee way of applying for jobs. It's like, okay, I've done my job now. What happens next? If you were thinking like an entrepreneur and their whole business was going to crumble if they didn't secure this job, they would be going well over and above just submitting an application for work. They would be going to networking events. They'd be trying to find the founder. They would be reading listening to a podcast about the founder and then putting together something off the back of what they heard the founder say on that podcast. At Nike, we used to run a lot of events, consumer events that people could come to. And we were always there, and often we would end up hiring people that we'd met at these consumer events for roles. They were qualified for the roles, of course, but we would meet them at the consumer events because they would be there. They'd start chatting to us, and there's a handful of people that I know who we met through those events, and they were always there. So look at events that brands are running. A lot of the people that work there will be at those events. Just find ways to make connections, get in front of people, and think a little bit more like an entrepreneur.
I love this.
Oh, go ahead, Audrey.
I had a question. Can I back up one step even further back on the playing board? Which is ranch. One question I had, backing up the bus just a smidge to going and networking like that. When I'm reading job listings online, like what do I want to apply for? Are there any phrases or buzzwords or writing styles? I don't even know what the answer to this is. Great if you question. Even know it, that are baked into job listings that are ageist and don't want, wet behind the ear newbies. Like, are you seeing any pattern in the way
2 to 3 years of experience required is one of them?
Well, 3 years beyond the obvious, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I haven't seen phrases specifically, but one thing we definitely see, which is frustrating, and is there's a lot of roles that get called entry level where they expect people with a couple of years experience already. And I know that younger people get frustrated with that. I get frustrated with that as well for them. It is really, really frustrating to see something that gets pitched as entry level, but then it says 1 to 2 years experience. So I think we need less of that. I think the people writing these job descriptions, it's either entry level or it's not. And you should take a chance on people at entry level. Take a chance on people that don't have any experience. If you're going to have junior people in your team, have a few that are fresh out of university or fresh out of whatever education or training, or even fresh out of school if that's right for your business. Like, don't be afraid to take a chance on people that don't have the exact experience that you're looking for, and in some cases no experience, if they've got those soft skills and they're showing that they're really hungry for the opportunity, because you can mold them into the kind of employee that you want them to be. You can teach them the things that you need to teach them. You can give them the skills that you need to give them, and they bring beautiful energy. When people are new into the workforce, they don't have any experience yet, they bring such wonderful energy. They're excited about work. They're a great member of a team when you have a junior in there that's new to the workforce. It's such a wonderful journey to be part of as a more senior person, because you get to mentor them, you get to help them, you get to coach them. So we definitely should have proper entry-level roles where we give people that don't have as much experience a chance. The other thing I'd say on that, in terms of entry-level roles, is not all companies have entry-level roles. So I see this a lot for younger people. They get frustrated. They say, oh, I'd love to work at, Apple or Google or a company like that. And then they don't see the entry-level roles coming up in those companies. Some companies don't have entry-level roles. When I started at Nike, we didn't really have entry-level roles. The most junior people in our teams required sort of 3 to 5 years experience because that was as junior as it got. They have them now. They have internships now, but when I first started, they didn't. So that's something to be aware of as well. If you are coming out, that there isn't always junior level or entry level roles in every single company. You need to find the ones where they do actually have those entry level roles, because not every company has them.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about self-awareness for a second. So how can a manager or a leader then recognize that maybe they're being ageist, and don't know it?
Well, recognizing it is harder, I think, because I think people don't realize, we talk about unconscious bias. I don't think people realize that they are actually doing it. And it often comes from our own triggers. Sometimes if we were treated with a bit of ageism when we were coming out of university and we first started our first job, we sometimes pass that on to other people. You hear phrases like, I had to do this when I was your age, or when I started out, it was really hard, and so therefore it should be for you, which is completely irrelevant. I mean, the job market's changed. It's such a different landscape for people coming out of university now and graduating. Hopefully the workplace is better for them. We should be hoping that the workplace gets better and better, and that people are better looked after, that bosses are better, that there's flexible working so that people can balance their lives more. We shouldn't be jealous of that, or making people feel bad that you've come into a workforce that was maybe that is maybe more flexible and better than the one that I grew up in. So I think we definitely need to eliminate phrases like when I was your age, or when I graduated, or when I started working, this is how it was. If you ever hear yourself saying that, I think that's a trigger that you definitely have a little bit of ageism in there, and you should probably check yourself and ask yourself, why am I saying this? Why am I putting these things onto this younger person? So that's probably one phrase that, if you hear yourself or someone in your business saying it, if you hear someone around you saying it to a junior member of their team, maybe pull them aside and say, hey, why would you say that? Why do they have to have that experience because you had that experience? Is it really the same, or could we be making this a better experience for them?
That's a great point. And one of Lee's other favorite phrases is get off of my lawn. When you start to
Whenever
age.
we hear somebody saying something that's really not, germane to the times we live in or whatever, it's always get off my lawn.
Off my lawn. CreativeCareerLab.com is your website, Stephanie. And you've got several programs that would be great for all the stakeholders that we're talking about that could use this. And these are all great ideas, by the way, that you've offered. So,
hey, Audrey, can I ask one last question?
Sure.
My last question would be, you didn't get the job, all right, as a young person like that. How can you go about finding out from HR, from a hiring manager or whatever,
great question,
why, you didn't get the job, or, how you could be coached up or whatever to improve and increase your chances of getting the next job?
Yeah, that is a great question. And there's a couple of parts to it, and I'll make it brief. The first thing to remember with feedback, even if you ask that question, the feedback isn't necessarily going to be constructive. So you have to be really careful how much you spin on the feedback that they gave you. And I have a great example of that. One of my interns at Nike years ago, she left Nike, went back to university, graduated university, applied for a role at another big global company, got to the final stages. There were 6 people left, 4 spots left, and she didn't get the spot. And she rang me up at Nike and she was crying, and she said, oh, the reason they told me I didn't get it was because I was too quiet. And she said, I think I'm going to have to be louder for the next place I interview. And I was like, no, you can't do that. She goes, what do you mean? And I said, I have to tell you something that I've never told you before, but the part of the reason we hired you at Nike was because you were quieter. I said, I really liked that you were very thoughtful in the way you spoke. You were a little bit quieter. You weren't as loud as the other people that were there that day. And we really liked that about you. It wasn't the only thing we liked about it, obviously, but we did really like that she was a bit quieter. And so I said to her, you can't change yourself for every single interview process, because if you change yourself to be louder, next time the feedback might be she was really loud and we didn't like that. I think you're too quiet is ridiculous feedback and completely irrelevant. Someone is quiet. There's absolutely nothing wrong with someone who's a bit quieter. And I think that's a terrible piece of feedback for particularly this company is a very big global company. I was very surprised that was the feedback. That is not helpful. It's not constructive. And it's definitely not something that you should use to change yourself going forward. So, be really careful with the feedback that you do get. What I would probably do if I wanted some honest feedback is I would probably go to the hiring manager directly via LinkedIn, because the HR manager is that sort of person in between. And in fairness to HR people, they do get stuck in the middle a little bit with this feedback process, because sometimes the honest reason of why someone didn't get it is not something they can share, or they don't want to share, or they're not getting the feedback from the hiring team. So I would sort of wait till the hiring process was maybe done a little bit, so that sort of formality of the hiring process is gone. And I would reach out to the hiring manager on LinkedIn, and there's a voice note function on LinkedIn that a lot of people are not aware of, and I love it. It really creates a beautiful connection between you and the person you're contacting that I don't think written text can do. So I would send them a voice note, and I would just say, hey, look, I'm a graduate. I'm new to this. I would really love any feedback that you can give me. This is not part of the formal process of your company. This is me and you as two individuals away from that process. But you've met me in a corporate environment. You've met me in a formal corporate environment. What advice can you give me? I would really appreciate it as a grad speaking to someone who's more senior in this industry, and just try and take yourself out of the process a little bit, because there's a lot of complexity around the process, and a lot of people don't like to give that feedback as part of a process. But if you can go direct to the hiring manager and pull yourself out of the process and say, hey, this isn't you speaking formally on behalf of your company. What can you offer? They might be more willing to give you something. And if you use that voice note function, they can hear your beautiful voice and how real you are and how much it means to you, that they probably are more likely to answer. And if they don't, that's on them.
I love that. Well, your LinkedIn is Stephanie Brown, career coach. Everybody reach out to Stephanie if you'd like to interact with her and get leveled up. Thanks again for coming back on the show. I think that this is so many great ideas and a topic that, we haven't done. So I appreciate it, Stephanie.
Thank you. I love chatting with you guys. Love the energy of this podcast. Always enjoy being on here. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the show, please rate and recommend on iTunes, Overcast, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also get more great information at salesfuel.com.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.